the OT arena, right, in the operational technology arena. It's like I said, the technology there has been so proprietary, kind of closed-minded, not leveraging standards or open standards, because again, it was kind of about locking people into that ecosystem. And they have clipboards and whiteboards, and they're entering data manually. And it's any fault. It's just that it was very difficult, very expensive to get a lot of these things put together. Where that's coming down a lot, right? Where these things are more approachable. But now it's if you're doing it that way, the problem is that you're not as efficient as you could be.
Welcome to Manufacturing Insiders. Today I have a technology evangelist, actually the Chief Technology Evangelist of Inductive Automation, who they make a industrial automation software. Travis is extremely knowledgeable about his product and really the technology, the industrial technology space in general. And I thought that this would be a valuable conversation to kind of share with guys out there that are running a shop and they've kind of had their eye on automation, AI, these sorts of topics, not quite sure how to get started in them, or what really action steps to take to start kind of gaining a competitive advantage in the technology space. So welcome to Manufacturing Insiders, Travis. Glad to have you.
Thanks for having me, and I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. So tell me about the industrial automation software Ignite that you guys have developed, and kind of what are the applications of it, just from a sky level?
Yeah, so we are just a software company. That's all we do. We don't do any hardware. We don't do any services. We purely build our software platform, Ignition. And Ignition is really a development toolkit. So it's a platform where you can develop any kind of industrial application. And that falls in categories like HMI, which is a human machine interface, where it's right next to a piece of equipment where we're interacting with that equipment, seeing the status and being able to control that equipment. To a full-on SCADA system, which is a supervisory control and data acquisition. So the idea is that at a facility, at a manufacturing site, centrally I can have a system where I aggregate all of my data from the plant floor up, and I can provide historian, alarming, reporting, and of course applications of visualization to all the right stakeholders that want that data. To full-on MES systems, which are manufacturing execution systems, to do things like track overall efficiency of the production facility, to track downtime of your equipment or your assets, to traceability of your products from raw materials to finished goods, to quality of that, and of course to IIoT applications, kind of the industrial Internet of Things, where we are getting data from the plant floor and getting it to the business, or of course to the cloud. So the Ignition platform is really, we like to call it a unified industrial integration platform. It kind of allows the company to unify their plant floor, get a lot out of that, build the right applications they can deliver to anybody, and of course bridge that gap between the plant floor and the business, to be able to take advantage of all the great technologies that are available today.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And I mean, I love talking about this topic because I just think that, as U.S. manufacturers, we need to start thinking about how we're going to remain competitive in a global market and even regionally. And I think that the companies that are able to take tools like your software and combine them with, the hardware tools out there, the sensors, the different interfaces, they're going to be the ones that are going to be successful in 5 years. The ones that don't do it are not. And so one thing I really like about your product is it's kind of approachable for smaller companies even, which a lot of the ones out there aren't, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you look in the industrial, on that side of the fence, for a long time, a lot of systems were very proprietary, very kind of closed-minded, or a lot of the big automation companies kind of had the whole stack. They provide the hardware to the software and kind of locked you into their ecosystem. And today, of course, in order for a company to really take advantage of all the technologies and different things, it's got to all work together, right? It's got to be something that can be interoperable. And so with Ignition, from the very beginning, we want to be very transparent, very open. Our licensing model is very simple. It's unlimited. So they could put the software in place and ultimately continue to scale up, add as many data points as they want, add as many applications, device connections, whatever they want to do, right? Their limitations are going to be really hardware and what they can dream up.
Right.
Along with leveraging open standards and a lot of IT standards so that we can get data to other systems and have that interoperability. That's really important. But for us, one of the most important things is if you want people to use your software, you got to be able to download it and try it out. And so you can go to our website, you can download a trial version, runs in a 2-hour trial. Every 2 hours you just reset, but you can fully evaluate every part of the product and make sure it works for what you're trying to do, along with understand the website what the pricing is going to be. And we have a full-on Inductive University, which has over 1,000 videos on how to do things in the product that's completely free, with a great documentation system, an online forum where people can exchange ideas and questions. So we're very much about supporting the community, supporting the ecosystem, and providing all the tools and resources that they need in order to understand, what we bring to the table.
Yeah. And the thing you mentioned about open standards is important. And I kind of think of like as a marketing agency, which I own, I think of like using WordPress versus using a very niche sort of proprietary content management system for building a website. And that's something I've competed with people on. It's like, this guy's pitching you this weird one-off content management system that if you want to move to another company or you want to use different technology with it, you're not going to be able to do that. You're stuck with them, right? You're a hostage. Whereas, WordPress, everybody knows how to use WordPress. It's an open sort of software. So talk about that in the context of your software.
Yeah, and that's it resonates so much in the OT arena, right? In the operational technology arena. It's like I said, the technology there has been so proprietary, kind of closed-minded, not leveraging standards or open standards, because again, it was kind of about locking people into that ecosystem. But nowadays, when we look at industrial, the Industry 4.0 initiatives, which is like all about digital transformation, right? And taking advantage of the latest technologies, that closed mindset doesn't work. You got to be able to get that data out and available to other systems. And open standards become really important way for that to happen. And so these are standards like on the OT side, there's OPC UA, which has been around for a long time. The idea there is to have an OPC server that provides connectivity to these different PLCs on the plant floor, as programmable logic controllers. These are all the data is on the plant floor. And a lot of them have different protocols for how they get data from them. And some of those are proprietary or more kind of legacy protocols. And so these OPC servers can connect to these disparate systems and provide that as a standard to anybody who wants to access that data. Mm-hmm. So in our product, we're both an OPC UA server and we're a client. We can leverage any kind of a system with that. So that allows us to connect to pretty much any device in the plant floor because of this standard, and it allows other applications to get it from us because of the standard. Another one being things like MQTT, which is a pub sub protocol that allows you to publish data into basically a broker or a centralized kind of enterprise service bus, if you will. Well, I can publish data and anybody can consume that data, can connect and subscribe to that data. Okay. And so it democratizes and allows that data to get out there. And because if you support MQTT, that means you could, IT could do it, or any other system that has that standard could access it. So you kind of get this guaranteed interoperability, right? Right. And this goes as far as like things like SQL databases, REST APIs to connect different systems together. It goes to things like identity providers, for authorization. If I log in through my Google account, right, or Okta or Duo or Microsoft Federation services, there's all sorts of different standards. And the latest one now, if you look at AI, is what's called an MCP server, which basically is how an AI engine can get the data, understand it from your system. And so all these standards become really important because there's no question that we can that the interoperability is there. We don't have to worry about that, right? Right. And if we really want to get to achieve all the amazing things that we can do today, we have to have a foundation that supports these standards, right? In order for that to be out there. So we believe very strongly in this, and we've always been supporting it because that mindset might, they might be able to achieve what they're trying to achieve and use that product there, but then what are they going to do outside of that, right? And it's where they go from there. And that's where it becomes really important.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of like everybody speaking the same language versus having like a workforce that everybody's speaking a different language. They just can't
Yeah.
communicate with each other. So, when we talk about the pieces communicating with each other and being able to have these standardized languages, if you will, um, what are some of those pieces, and how are they used in the shop?
So in terms of like the standards that we're just talking about there.
Yeah, so like what I'm trying to I guess clarify in my mind, and probably in some of the listeners' minds, is what are some of the technologies that you're incorporating in your manufacturing facility that information needs to feed into your system to be able to
Right.
make meaning out of?
Yeah, so I mean, you have to look at it too. A lot of manufacturing facilities, some have really have really old equipment that has been around. It works well, and it's been around for a while. And it may not have a PLC or some way of getting the data from that. Some of these things, like you can imagine, some facilities just have manual valves, right, for opening, closing, and moving product around. And so, two, of course, facilities that have these things, and maybe they don't have any way of getting the data out of them. And so, one of the most important parts first is just to kind of do an inventory, a survey, like what data is out there that I could go and access, right? And and then be able to put a system in place to go and capture that, bring that in. And when you bring it in, you want to contextualize it. You want to provide some extra metadata, like what. By bringing the signal in, what is the engineering units of that? What's my expected range? And is it part of an asset or a piece of equipment? And so if I can contextualize that, I can now have more information I can provide, right, for analytics later on.
Right.
So the first step is really capturing that data. And in some cases, we have these devices already in place. We can bring it in. In a lot of other cases, we don't, in which case that's now where we can leverage new smart sensors and bring, like, there's LoRaWAN technology, which is a wireless technology, and there's battery powered sensors that you could just literally, they're magnets, you go place it in there and it can get vibration or temperature, humidity, and information that you may not have had, or those valves, those manual valves. You can actually put a sensor on it that gives you the position of that valve, so you know if it's open or closed. And now you have a signal that you can bring into a system where we can actually see, is all my valves right now in the state that I want it to be in. So the most important part about these projects is to really first figure out that data. And we are now in a good position where the technology's there. It's not that expensive to go and, it used to be very expensive to go and get access, right? You had to go and get electricians. You had to, run power. You had to do all these things that would be very expensive and you have to, get people to come in. Nowadays, this new smart sensors, I can just literally place one in and I have it. It's wireless getting back up, and I can use that data. So that's the first kind of start, is that data part. And then, because once you bring the data in, if you could just look at it on a screen, provide some simple history of it, the people that care are going to know what to do with that data. And there's going to be a lot of wins you get just by doing that.
Right. Yeah, and almost any piece of data you can measure is probably going to add some value. But is there sort of a science to deciding which piece of data to start tracking first? Like, do you say, my profitability is tied to the parts per hour that I put out, I need to start measuring my parts per hour? Like, is that kind of the logic behind it?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So it is about identifying that business case, right? What is the thing that we're struggling with, right? Is it that we are struggling on, changeover of products? Are we struggling on equipment that has a lot of downtime, or has there been failures of equipment that we care about, or are we just trying to kind of optimize our process? Really identifying that business case first is important, because you don't want to just bring data in for its own sake, right? What are you going to do with that? It's a lot of people will say, if I just bring data in, I put it there, it could become a data swamp. And so we have to know how we're going to act on that data and who is going to be acting on that data. And so a lot of times, especially for manufacturing, if you have a line, there's always one piece of equipment that is the most important thing. If that thing goes down, you're not making product. And being able to really fully track the downtime of that equipment, to kind of see all the little micro stops and kind of understand what's happening, because it's hard for an operator to really see that especially these are high-speed operations. So, identifying that business case is important, and for some cases now it's things like energy. Like, I have been able to measure the energy consumption of these machines and how that's starting up throughout, and understanding our like peak demand. We can save money on how we operate our facilities. So there's just a lot of different use cases you can go after, but you have to kind of identify what you're trying to solve. Because if you get one use case, let's say we're trying to get you figure out energy consumption. Well, we can simply go start with a couple of important assets, put some sensors in place, get that data up, and start measuring just the energy and get it to the people that are making those decisions. You start small, you get the win, you then move on to the next challenge. And that's really the goal. You can't eat the whole elephant. You can't do all of it at once. You gotta figure out how to break it up into these bite-sized chunks.
Yeah. Does any example in your mind stand out of a company that started using your software, maybe tied in with some other tools and sensors, and had a pretty dramatic result? Like, is there something a story that you normally tell about that?
Yeah, there's a lot of different stories that we can bring there, and we do every year. We have a conference. It's our Ignition Community Conference, and at that we have what's called Discover Gallery. A lot of customers and integrators will submit projects to us, and we get to see what their challenges were and how they get to, of course, the success. And there's always some that really kind of resonate with you, right, in terms of what they're doing. And I'll use a couple examples. One is Chobani. And so everybody kind of knows Chobani. They make the leader in making yogurt. They have a huge facility in Twin Falls, Idaho. It's over 1 million square feet, and really it's a huge process, a lot going on. And for them, it was every piece of equipment has its own little HMI and control system there, but it was more of the kind of enterprise dashboards and enterprise visibility of everything that's going on, right? Just to be able to see, where in my plant should I be focusing my attention, right? Where is the issues happening? And so they created this thing called a Cho Dash, which is like their enterprise dashboards. And it was really just a focus of getting data from all the pieces of equipment, getting it up, and so that they can analyze and see where their their deficiencies are, or where they should be focusing their attention. And that has created some huge yields for them because they have it's a very modern facility, because they are able to identify the areas where they have issues, and then go and put solutions in place, right? Optimize those. And a lot of that from them was downtime, right? Downtime is a big piece. If you can minimize downtime, you're able to produce more product. And so, yeah, that's a good example. I like another example. It's a company called Sherwin-Williams. Everybody knows in terms of paint, and for them, they started really, really small. They went one of our conferences. And they did a presentation. It was just getting one signal from a machine, and it was like all they did was like focus on giving that one signal, which is just if it is running or not. And from there, they can give you, they store that into a database, and they can give all sorts of results, right? How long has it been running, right? How long has it been down? Is there a pattern of when it's been running and when it's been down? And so all these metrics can come from just one simple signal. And that has been able to propel them to really focus on everywhere in the process where they should be doing that. So these are a couple of good examples of just and you can see the whole case study on our website, and it really goes into more detail of how that works.
So if somebody was listening and they said, yeah, I can kind of think of what machine is sort of the linchpin of my operation or the constraint, and I'd really like to start measuring, electricity usage or uptime, et cetera, would they start with you, and you might set them up with an integrator that might have the actual technology piece, or how would that work?
Yeah, so I mean, oftentimes they start with us, and we kind of show them the art of the possible, right? Kind of get them to understand what our product can do, but ultimately we're not the ones implementing that, right? So when it comes down to getting the solution in place, they're either going to kind of do it themselves because the tool is approachable for them to kind of build their own, but they don't have the resources. A lot of times it's going to be bringing in an integrator to do that, and we have a network of over 4,000 integrators. that companies can choose from, and ultimately can help put those can identify all the things they're trying to do and implement that and help support that long term. So that's really kind of the best way to get started, is first to understand. I mean, anybody can download the software and play around with it and kind of connect and see the value there. But ultimately, when you with an integrator, they can really drive that ROI.
Okay. We've talked about earlier kind of the cultural perspective, the culture inside of your company, and kind of having that, I guess, digital first mindset, and that sometimes being a barrier to, a successful digital transformation for companies.
Right.
Would you think that that's a big issue? Like, if I'm a leader, a CEO of a company, and I already know I want to start measuring some data and I want to utilize that to become more efficient, more profitable, what steps do I have to take beforehand?
Yeah, so it's a great question, because when you look at especially industrial applications, right? And I take categories like SCADA system we were mentioning, which is a kind of that full supervisory kind of application of the plant floor. MES, or the manufacturing execution systems. Typically, when we build those, we are thinking about only the data that we need to fulfill that problem, right? And to provide what's needed for those operators to run that side of it. We're not necessarily thinking about what does that data mean now to the business, right? And how should we provide our architecture such that I can get that data to the business much easier. We're just thinking about building that one application, getting that done, going next one, build an application. So if you kind of do this in a siloed approach, then later on when you want to go and pull and aggregate data together, it can be harder because you're having to get it from these different systems, right? And so I think that really it's a mindset that has to change now, where the leadership has got to drive this kind of culture of, hey, we're going to be a digital first company. We want to get there. That means that we need to have more collaboration between our different teams, especially between our operations and our IT teams, right? We need them to work in tandem to figure out how we can provide a better architecture, one that kind of, where we think about data first, we kind of decouple the data from the applications. Let's get to the data, let's get the right context and the way we want to model that, get it into an infrastructure that makes it accessible. Then it's easy from there. We can build applications once we have the data in a common infrastructure, right? But it really takes, it takes that collaboration and teams to be able to make that a reality. It's not something that's just going to happen from one, from just one side of the fence. And so I think that it's not the technology problem really these days. It's more about that culture. It's if you can drive that digital first culture, and kind of say, hey, we're going to own this, and this is our standard for how we want this to work. That's going to yield some big results.
So from a management perspective, do you have any recommendations for how to instill that sort of a culture? Is there kind of a step-by-step approach to do that?
I wish there was a step-by-step approach. I mean, we've been trying to figure out how to really instill that there. I mean, that's going to come down to having leadership really believe in what they need to do going forward. I would say that usually there's one champion, right? There's always somebody with an organization that kind of understands the full picture, and if they can, get to the rest of the teams to understand and be on the same page, that can go a long ways. But it's going to have to, one of the things I think, one action that could be done, I've seen it done a few times, is if you take the operations team and the leaders of operations, leaders of IT, and you put them into the same team, right? You bring them together and have one new team that says, hey, we're going to drive this going forward, where now decisions are being made from both, with both of them, instead of just independently on those two sides of the fence, which is how it's been done for a long time. So things like that can really help drive the change we're looking for. But it is a difficult thing, and you really have to get organizations that are excited and motivated to want to do this.
Right. Yeah, and so I mean the motivating factor, I think for most companies is profit, right? So I think if you can make cases for the possibilities, like say, we have the potential to, become 15% more profitable, which adds up to, whatever, $3 million a year. If we can do this successfully, I think that would be a great way to approach it from a management standpoint. I
Yeah.
wonder, a lot of times this seems really intangible to me, right? Like, what are the deliverables? What are the possibilities? How do you sell that aspect to people?
Yeah, I guess that's why I say it goes back to what we were saying about identifying that business case. There are definitely, I mean, profitability is huge, right? In terms of that's what every manufacturer wants to do, is be able to produce more and drive more profit with that. And ultimately, I think a lot of times the people that are driving these decisions, they know what they kind of have to solve, right? What they need to do.
Mhm.
But ultimately they're attacking it, I think, a lot from the top down, right? And saying, okay, here's how we're going to approach it from a digital infrastructure on the top, but we're neglecting that where all the data actually happens to be is on the is on the plant floor, right? That's where all that that experience is. That's the people that are running these facilities, and so really getting them engaged in that transformation is, I think, crucial, because everybody knows how to kind of how to make things better, right? How to drive things to get forward, and it's all about that collaboration. So I think you basically just have to you have to also prove and show a win. There's got to be a place to start, right? So what
Mhm.
is the lowest hanging fruit thing that we can do? Let's go and drive that. Let's get the value, and hopefully it'll propel more projects, right, and get people more motivated to keep going forward.
Right. So when you talk about the business case, when you look at your data and the companies out there that have adopted your software, let's just maybe use kind of like small to mid-sized companies as our example here. Would you be able to identify maybe the most common use case for your software in those types of companies? Would it be, measuring downtime? Would it be measuring, production levels? What would that be?
Yeah. So if you look, actually, a lot of people, they've done some analysis in terms of like search terms, like what are people searching for it's the most, right?
Right.
And you would think it'd be something like AI, in terms of being the highest, but the reality is, especially in manufacturing, the number one thing that people are looking for is OE and downtime. It's been around for a long time, but that still is a very important area, because it's very tangible. It's very actionable, right?
Mhm.
Like, if I don't really know how my equipment is performing and running, I'm not going to be able to really know what to do, right? So it's a perfect place to start. So I'd say downtime is still, one of the biggest things that people are trying to figure out and put in place. And there's never been one really easy button for that. Our software, we make it easy to collect and to look at that data, but in order to really drive that, you have to have the right sensors in place, right?
Right.
Um, so sometimes you start with, is my machine running or not, right? Do I have that one signal? Is it running or not? But then from there, you have to identify what are the reasons for why it is down, right? Is it down because there's a belt that broke? Is it down because there's a broken item that's in there? What is that reason?
Or
And
a shift
so,
change, right?
yeah, so there's a lot. So being able to, I kind of identify those reasons, and hone in to know, okay, well, here's my piece of equipment that has the most downtime, and within that, what are the downtimes that I should be focusing on? How can I adjust my maintenance schedule such that I can avoid these kind of downtimes? And so I still think this is the biggest area, because you can't really get to the full analytics and AI until it's like you have to crawl, walk, and run, right? And the first part of that is the crawling is bringing the data in, getting the right information from the plant floor. The walking is being able to do things like get downtime analysis of that and be able to get the data to the right people. And then, of course, later it's running to even get further optimizations where you're now taking account a lot more of the process, and leveraging AI and ML to do that. So I do think downtime is still a huge topic.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's very informative. That's definitely helpful. Yeah, because I mean, I think if we can help manufacturers kind of think along the lines of what problem should I be looking at to solve first, I think we can get them closer to adopting technology. One other thing I was interested in talking about was, in the lean circles, a lot of times you hear about kind of like digital signage and having displays to show information throughout the shop floor. And I know that that's part of, kind of the data display, your software plays a role in that. What are some ways that companies are doing that, and maybe ways that are really impactful to their business?
Yeah, that's a good question. So let's go back to the OE downtime example, right? Because for a long time, I think there's also that culture, like downtime is a great thing to measure, and OE is a great thing to measure. But there's this kind of like, oh, well, if I get this put in place from an operator's perspective, that like they're watching, right? I'm going to get in trouble if my efficiency is low, or if I'm compared to other teams or other shifts or whatever. And so, it's really also about, okay, we're going to put these things in place, but it's really to help you as operators to understand how you're doing, right? And to help figure out how to better perform. It's not to get you in trouble. Right? I think it's an important thing. It's what we're trying to accomplish. And so digital signage can really help. If you can imagine just having dashboards where you can see at a glance where things are at right now, especially especially compares to where you have been or where you can go. It can really help kind of motivate the people to the operators, right? And it kind of gamify it a little bit, right? Like I don't want that. I want better numbers. I'm going to go and figure things out. So digital signage can really help, provide the right context to the people that need it quickly, because their hands might be, they might have it been full, right? They might not be right near the piece of equipment where you have the panel. They're not going to get out their phone or whatever. So a quick look up to a big TV can really help with that. And some of the big successful companies have heads-up displays like literally everywhere where they're showing various KPIs, whether it's OE downtime or whether it's other KPIs that they care about, that the operators know, okay, that I can act on. So it's really about making it actionable and kind of getting them motivated to understand what's happening quickly.
Right. Yeah, I was talking to another guy that we had kind of an in-depth conversation about lean, and I can't remember the time frames or the distance, but it was something like somebody that doesn't know anything about your operation should be able to look at the operation and in 2 seconds from 20 feet away or something like that, know exactly what the status thing, is it good or is it bad, right? And I've also heard companies talk, like you were talking about, sort of that gamification aspect of it, where it actually lends itself to a better work culture and to more motivated employees because they feel like what they're doing is being recognized. And, if they do a good job, they want people to notice it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that does come down to culture too, in terms of just why we put these things in place, why it's important for you, how you can benefit from this, recognizing when people do a great job, and kind of showing, hey, this team achieved this OE, for this shift, congratulations type of thing. I think that culture goes a long way. And also recognition. So I think the most important thing is the recognition that operators don't want to do a bad job, right? They're not like, and often they're the ones that are the scapegoat for everything. When something goes wrong, it's pinned on the operator. Well, they didn't do their job right. Well, when you really look at it, typically when you audit those situations, it's that the systems weren't there to help them do their job right. And so we've got to help them do their job. And in turn, you're going to get better results, right? If you can change that culture, it really, I think, is very impactful. I'm all about, I came from integration background myself. I'm all about operator first, like making sure the systems are designed for the way they need it, right? It's not designed for the person that's at their desk. It's they get to see some information, but the people that need to run this every day need to have the right tools in front of them.
Right. Yeah, definitely. So in terms of the types of companies, in my mind, it seems like every type of company could benefit from some level of automation. Do you find that there's companies that really benefit, whether it be, having a high volume of repeatable parts, or maybe a number of employees? Like, is there kind of a typical use case of like this kind of company is going to really benefit, this kind of company maybe not so much? Like, is there a way to say that?
It's a good question. Certainly when you look at the size of companies, usually the big guys, they have the resources, they have the budgets to be able to kind of bring in a lot of technology and take advantage of it. Whereas when you get to, of course, the smaller manufacturers, their teams are a lot smaller, right? Um, However, data is still as critical to them as it is to the large manufacturers, right? The small and medium sized ones really, they could really benefit from bringing in, specific technologies. And I think now what's great now is those technologies are more approachable than it's ever been, right? You kind of get to this, technology introduced, everybody gets really excited, but it's really expensive. Then it comes back down, normalizes where those things are now approachable. And I do think that the teams that are the smaller teams are really hungry for the data, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're the ones that the bigger companies have the data. Now they're trying to figure out the more complex things, whereas a lot of the smaller ones don't have it. So I think they certainly can benefit the most from bringing in, like, just being able to say, just get as much data as they can from the plant floor, because we know time and time again it pays off if they just can get that into the right people's hands.
Right. With you mentioned before about kind of having, and I can't remember the terminology, but having this data in a format that lends itself to be sort of open source.
Yeah.
So is there like data that's being aggregated by companies that are using your software that then the other companies that use your software, somebody that's new to it, can pull from to start to build that business case, or whatever it might be used for?
Yeah, no, exactly. A good question, and that's kind of what I was talking about earlier about the sort of what our digital infrastructure it looks like, and to figure that out, kind of decouple the data side from the application side a little bit, because where people are kind of driving this right now, there's a concept called UNS, Unified Namespace, and the idea behind this is that I have a lot of data out there, and I want to be able to organize my data into a hierarchy that makes sense, right? If I'm going to have some application or somebody tap in the data, they got to be able to understand it. Right? They got to know what's in there. They got to be able to find things quickly, right? It can't be a data swamp. It's got to be organized. Right. So UNS is where they can organize into a hierarchy, and often this follows what's like an ISO 95 standard, where you kind of say, here's the enterprise, here's the sites, the areas of the manufacturing facility, the lines or a piece of equipment, and the type of data it's coming from, right? Process data, KPI data, OE downtime data, whatever it might be, right? Organized into this namespace. So that's step number one, right? Organization and modeling data is incredibly important. And modeling, what I mean by modeling is actually defining an asset or object model, or information model is kind of interchangeable. But the idea to say that if I have a compressor or a tank or a motor, and at different facilities, they might be different manufacturers of the tanks or motors, right? They may have different sensors and PLCs behind the scenes, but they're still, to my business, they're still a tank or still a motor, right? So if we can define what that looks like and standardize across the entire board, and so behind the scenes we might map whatever the differences are, but to this common model, then we're looking at like assets, right? We're able to compare these things, and so I can build analytical model off of that much easier, right? So information modeling and organization is paramount, and that's why if you think about digital infrastructure first, and you define what you want that to be and drive that, then the applications will come, right? Because you have it organized. The other part of this, though, is to make data accessible, from a technology standpoint, to be able to pull out, and that's where open standards become really important. So I'll use an example of right now, a lot of people are using MQTT because basically I can publish. From the plant floor, I can publish my data into a centralized broker that all that data sitting there, and I could have different people connect and consume. And so when I publish new data, they would get that data, but it would be organized in the form that we need, right? And they would have the context of what they need. And so that's one area where kind of people are getting success right now. And there's different products too that support, that plus historical data, and there's open ways of getting that information out, kind of data warehouses, time series databases, those type GraphQL databases have relationships. So the idea though is what does that infrastructure look like to us? How can I organize it? How can I get it into a form that is then open and accessible to all the right stakeholders? If you have that mentality, it makes your next job really easy. You're not having to figure all that out, right? Or have to write custom code to map data from one system to another and to try to then normalize data. Essentially, like when ML first came out, machine learning, it was data scientists who would go and grab data from like a legacy historian, and it was not contextualized. That some of the data in there was bad. And so they would do this whole effort of bringing it in, and they would write code to clean it, normalize it, map it to something different. And now you can't really trace it even back to where it originally came from. And then they would, write some algorithms off that data to get analysis. That is fine, but wouldn't that be better if you could define that at the edge, that single source of truth? And so that I don't have to ever think about remapping that. Everywhere that I want to use that data, it's understood. And they have all the information and context needed to do their job. So this is a big area right now, kind of all wrapped under this UNS concept. So it's easier for people to kind of conceptualize in terms of what this means.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, my understanding is a lot more simplistic than most of what you explained there. But, like I'm picturing scenarios too, where you've got, we talk about the workforce issues and, people bringing in new employees, and then you've got the older guys retiring with all the knowledge. It seems to me that this is a way to kind of centralize knowledge and make that training process easier down the road. Is that accurate?
Absolutely, because especially when you bring in the newer workforce, the technologies they're used to and that they're using on a daily basis. If they have to learn this old legacy stuff to kind of figure out then they're going to be less productive, right? But if they can tap into something that they already know, then now they can start doing more themselves, right?
Right.
Especially you've seen it with not just understanding the languages or the data formats or the protocols, but also just getting it to a phone or a tablet that in a form that's what they're used to, right? So I think if you can, by doing these modernization efforts, you're putting out this world. It's been there's so much domain expertise that's required, and so legacy. So it's a lot of legacy and different types. It's a wild west in terms of the plant floor, right? If you normalize it, you're now making it easy for all the people that are coming in to do more, right? And there's less that they have to learn. And so I truly believe this is an important part, because if you have these old systems and you don't modernize and those people retire, you might be stuck, right? How do I manage that?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. The one other thing you mentioned about when we were talking about having that repository of information across different companies to kind of build those models, and you mentioned like the compressor and things like that, like kind of what came into my mind, you can tell me if I'm right, was if a compressor of this size, back to the electricity example, should use this much electricity across the board, and yours is way out of whack, like your numbers are just coming in some sort of weird edge case, we can kind of flag that and say this is a problem based on that information.
Yeah, absolutely. And right now there's some great in a lot of data warehouses, there's automatic tools for things like anomaly detection, which basically you kind of know what a good profile is of a piece of equipment, right? The manufacturers of that equipment typically tell you, right, what's normal and what's not normal. And so if you collect the data and you have the common formats for all of that, now you can approach anomaly detection really easy and be like, it could tell you, like, you have of your 100 compressors, here are the 3 that are really deviating from normal or have some differences. Go focus in on that, right? Where then now I know where at least to go and do my investigation, look up other data, kind of figure out what's happening. And maybe it's the equipment itself needs to be maintenance. Maybe it's on its way to failure. Just being able to kind of figure out where I should to point my attention. That's a huge area right now.
Gotcha. Okay. This might be a bad question. I'm not sure, but so I mean, a lot of companies, manufacturers, machine shops talk about ERPs, right? How does that relate to your industrial automation software? Does it tie into it? Does it replace it? Like, how does that work together?
So yeah, it's definitely tying into it and integrating. We're not trying to replace ERP. We don't do ERP, right? Like at the end of the day, that's the business systems. That's where all of the orders and transactions and bill materials and all that stuff exists. But that the integration is paramount. It's a necessity, because ultimately, if I'm running a particular, like the schedule of what I need to run is typically in an ERP system, right? And I want to pull that down, and we may have to make some, the plant managers sometimes make adjustments to that in terms of how they're going to run things because they know more about the equipment. But ultimately, we need to be able to pull that down, and when we execute, we know what we're executing. We understand, right, what products we're doing, and we have the recipes and all that stuff that's important for that. And then those results of that run need to go back right into the systems. And so that having it be integrated both ways, it lets it lets people who are doing their jobs on both sides get the full context of what's going on, right? And you should never be entering that data in by hand, right? Mm-hmm. Like if you are doing that, you have a potential for a mistake, and just in terms of time, when's it going to be inputted, and if I input it, could I fat finger it and put the wrong information in there? And so the more that we can automate the integration between the operation side, the SCADA and MES side to the ERP, the better that it is. And we've seen that time and time again.
Okay. Yeah, that's fascinating. So you definitely need both pieces of technology, and you'd be amazed how many shops out there are still entering stuff by hand. I mean, there is a lot of paperwork in a lot of these places. It's a common
thing, and a lot of people. You hear a lot like where they're shamed. She's shamed of the fact that's just the reality. That's how things have been done, right?
Right.
And they have clipboards and whiteboards, and they're entering data manually. And it's not that's any fault. It's just that it was very difficult, very expensive to get a lot of these things put together. Where that's coming down a lot, right? Where these things are more approachable. But now it's if you're doing it that way, the problem is that you're not as efficient as you could be, right? And so in a digitized world, things need to be more automatic and more digitized, and using tablets and phones and getting the data directly from the equipment and bringing it in and integrating the systems together. It becomes more paramount now because of where we are. But nobody should feel shamed if that's what they're doing it. We just know there's already areas for improvement. That's where you can hone in on this.
Right. Yeah. I like to wrap up with just a little segment called "What Do You Need?" And really, this is if there's somebody listening in the audience that either has a resource or is in your target market or whatever it might be. Is there any problems you've been trying to solve recently that you'd like to meet that person?
That's a good question. So let me see here. You kind of stumped me for a second. So it's a great question. But first of all, in terms of what we're doing, if anybody has any questions on how how Ignition works or any of that, we're more than happy to do a demonstration. You can download a trial. You can request a demo. We're very transparent. We're very open to that. If there's any problems that you're trying to solve, we can see how the product can fit in to do that. We're in the middle right now of getting a new release out the door. There will be a new beta coming in the next couple of weeks, where we are really bringing in more and more IT technologies into the fold and kind of really bridging that gap between OT and IT. So ultimately, if you have if you have any digitization efforts, there's ways to start. There's great technologies out there right now that you can easily take advantage of.
Yep. Okay. So with your beta, are you kind of using, people that are already customers to do that beta testing, or you're just doing it in-house, or you're looking for
No, so
companies
it'll be a public beta. That'll be out there. Anybody can access it. And what we're doing really with it is we're kind of getting into a lot of the newer ways for how people are managing and deploying these systems at scale. And that's where a lot of IT departments are. They're more responsible now for actually deploying and physically managing all of these systems that are there. But of course, these things are still, controlled and maintained by the people that are building it, right? The operations folks. So this release is focused on kind of that management side, as well as it's focused on getting data to more places. So like supporting newer protocols like Kafka, and be able to do event streaming, moving data between different systems a lot easier. We're building a new historian into Ignition using new time series technologies. We're adding things like offline forms, so people can actually enter in data on their tablet when they're not have no cellular or Wi-Fi. So there's a lot of these features that are going to help really bridge that gap even further. And but it'll be public, and anybody can play around with those features once it comes out.
Very cool. Okay. So beta testers. All right. Well, Travis, thanks a lot for coming on today. You are a wealth of knowledge, and I think really anybody in our manufacturing audience should reach out and have a conversation with you, because this is something we need. We need this technology inside our manufacturing facilities if we're going to stay competitive. So thanks a lot.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Nate. Really appreciate it.